Hello and welcome to BYJU'S classes and our approach strategy series on how to approach the mains examination. In this video, we'll discuss paper 3, the GS paper 3, which includes economics, environment, science and technology, disaster management and security issues. This is a comprehensive, broad perspective of the syllabus. So what we are going to do in this particular video is we are going to first understand the syllabus well, exactly what the syllabus means. Then we look at the sources, which means from where we should study. Syllabus tells us what to study, but how to study it, where to study it from, that we'll look at the sources of good sources from which you can get all the relevant information required for any particular area of the syllabus. Then we look at focus areas inside the syllabus, which are the real focus areas where the questions have been regularly coming from, which are the items in the news right now, the hot topics we'll look at. Then we look at previous year's questions to get a feel for how the questions come. And finally, we look at the way forward, which is how to tackle this examination in a very right and concise and concrete manner, because we don't have much time left. So overall, we would have come up with a complete approach strategy on approaching the CSE GS paper 3, which is primarily the economy paper. So as we know, a limited time frame is there. So we have to be realistic about our expectations of what can be done now. We have to accept that in the limited amount of time, we cannot cover the entire syllabus. In case you haven't done already, if you have done already, very good, continue the good work and kick the race into the real next gear now. But in case you haven't completed the whole syllabus, you cannot complete the whole syllabus. So we have to start narrowing down on what we can do realistically. And what can we do is 5 things that we can do right now, starting today. So what are those 5 things? First, basic concepts. This is one thing you cannot compromise on. Without the basic concepts, this GS paper 3 in particular and the mains exam in general is not easy to tackle. So make sure at least the basic concepts are clear. And the basic concepts are very easily available from NCERT textbooks, etc. Does not require too much investment of time and effort. So this is something we can do in the time frame that we have. And this should be the first focus as we approach the mains, as we start our sprint to the finish line. Second thing. What is the second most important thing required? Second important thing is current affairs. Immersion. Now, what do I mean by immersion? Immerse yourself in current affairs. Do not compromise on your daily newspaper reading. Do not compromise on using the information that you get during your daily newspaper reading and extending that through the internet, through Googling and referring to some good websites, such as including our websites, including the content we'll be providing to you over email, etc. So do not neglect this. These two things you cannot neglect. You don't have to go back and read all the newspapers before, but whatever is in your hand right now, please make sure that it's being covered. Every day's newspaper is covered in advance, properly and very, very pointedly. Do not waste your time reading unnecessary things in the newspaper, because we do not have enough time as of now. We have to have laser sharp focus on what we study and what we do not study. What to read and what not to read is very, very crucial right now. So we look at basic concepts and we have to look at current affairs. Now, third is practice. Practice what? You have to start practicing your answer writing. You have to start practicing your answer writing skills, answer construction skills. For that, make sure that you subscribe to All India Test series so that you get a benchmarking as well as wonderful practice on the best kind of questions that has a very good correlation with what has been coming consistently over the years. Now, I told there are 5 things, right? 5 things you should do. What is the 4th one? Take a wild guess. The 4th one is practice. And the 5th one is also practice. So essentially, this becomes very crucial. So practice, but make sure your basic concepts and your current affairs are very clear. That should be. So these 2 things you do not compromise, and on practice you invest the bulk and majority of your time. So now we'll discuss how to approach specifically paper 3. Now, as we discuss, current affairs is one of the most crucial part of our next phase in our preparation. But much of current affairs, the base is paper 3. If you look at it, much of a current affairs will be either economy related or environment related, or to an extent polity related, but polity related typically tends to be about the economy, at least the current affairs part, because it will be about growth, it will be about poverty, it will be about these things which is actually linked to the economy. So understanding the economy and some of the theory behind it, the concepts behind it becomes almost imperative if you want to give good answers to current affairs questions. And paper 3 is almost wholly dynamic. Current affairs dominates paper 3. which means if you want to score good in paper 3, you have to have current affairs. But to be able to do well in current affairs, you have to learn to analyze current affairs well. To analyze current affairs well, you have to be clear on your concepts, which is why we said first things first, basic concepts we have to be clear on. Now, another thing to note about paper 3 is that it's a paper with maximum interlinkages. Paper 3 connects with geography because of environment. Paper 3 connects with history because of economy. Economy has a big role in how history plays out. Paper 3 connects with because polity and economy interaction determines almost all of the current affairs that is available. Paper 3 even links to paper 4 because paper 2 and paper 3, which is polity and economy together, is molded by the ethical framework in which they are founded. So there is interlinkage there also. But it's a paper with a maximum amount of interlinkage. So if you understand the concepts in this paper well, it helps you throughout your preparation. So as an overall analysis, we can say it's a scoring paper because it's very, very conceptually rooted. And if you understand it well, you can give good analytical answers. So potentially scoring capacity is there, but because a lot of people neglect current affairs, we will see that the scoring is not always optimal in this paper. But if you can focus on current affairs and concepts well, scoring is definitely possible. Current focus is an important theme of this paper. Almost everything in this paper will be current affairs focused. So you have to keep that going in your mind whenever you're studying for this particular paper. It's a wide syllabus, but it's highly conceptual. That means if you cover the basic concepts, even though it's a wide syllabus, everything else becomes just applying those concepts. So even though it's a wide syllabus, it's actually a very, very tackleable syllabus. Notes are very helpful because it's highly conceptual and current affairs related. So if you make these notes based on current affairs and the basic concepts, those notes will basically cover everything that is required for your syllabus. Good return on investment means the amount of energy and effort you put into this will come back as good marks in this paper, but make sure you do it in the right way, current focus and concepts based. Now what we are going to look at is the paper 3 structure. Just understand the entire structure of the paper 3 and how everything is interconnected in the paper itself. Basically, we're looking at the logic of the paper. Now, as we said, it's a large paper with a diverse number of topics, but conceptually, we can broadly classify them into the following categories. Part 1 is Indian economy and the issues related to that. So here, all the economic concepts are required to understand this well. This is important because as administrators, as policymakers, one of our main objective is to improve the country, improve the living standards of the people of the country, and that is through improving the economy, improving the growth of the economy, solving the issues in the economy. To be able to do this, you have to know the concepts well. So UPSC is going to ask you, you want to come and help us solve these problems, but have you taken the effort to understand the concepts first? So you have to tell that, yes, I have understood the concepts, see my answers, and that is proof. But even though our main focus is on improving growth, eradicating poverty, etc., we have to always keep in mind that we are part of a larger system, which is the environment. Now, if we don't take care of the environment properly, sustainable development will not happen. So here we're looking at development in part 1 or paper 1. So in part 1, we're looking at developing the economy, but do not neglect environment. So a policy maker has to not only think about development, but think about sustainable development. That's why UPSC is asking, are you also concerned about the environment? Do you understand what problems can come if you ignore the environment? So we have to inform UPSC, yes, look at my answers. I understand the environment well, and I understand that we have to take care of the environment even though we are focusing on growth. So only that will allow long-term growth, because our focus is not only for the current generation but for future generations as well. So environment comes into the picture, because if you want to have proper sustained economic growth, you have to also take care of the environment well. Then comes science and technology. If you want to overcome some of the limitations imposed by environment and still achieve growth, how do you do that? You invest in science and technology and science is what will help us push the frontiers that is there. Environment poses certain limits to growth, but science and technology can help us overcome some of those limits or help us do it in a sustainable fashion. So science and technology might be able to help us sidestep some of the problems such as pollution, etc. So we have to invest in that. So a lot of the problems in growth and in environment can be overcome by science and technology. So UPSC is asking, are you competent enough to understand what science and technology can help as far as growth and environment is concerned? So we have to show in the answers, yes, we do understand the importance and we know how to apply and we know the basic concepts here as well. In addition, we are also keeping track of whatever current events are going on in science and technology, and we are always aware of the interlinkage between these things that we have to show in this part of the syllabus. Then comes disaster management. in all these things we have some control, but sometimes we don't have control. Disasters will strike and we can't do much about it. So how to manage a bad situation? Here we are trying to improve growth. Here we are trying to accept some limits are there. Here we are trying to overcome those limits. But here sometimes we can't do much. But what can we do to manage? We can't avoid things, but can we still manage so that even in the bad situation we can come out of it not really hurt? And finally, internal security issues. If any of these things are neglected, we'll have problems because the people will not trust the government anymore. The policymakers will lose the trust of the government, and also neighboring countries etc. also might pose a certain threats to our economy, to our environment, and even cause disasters. So that becomes internal security issues. So this is what can happen if we neglect to do our job well. Can we tackle these things as well? And if this is impacting any of these things, can we sidestep those issues as well? So again, UPSC is asking, do you understand some of the human-made problems that are here? That is human-made and security issues that face the country, which also has to be taken into consideration while we are pushing for growth, etc. And we have to say, yes, we do understand that part as well. So what we're going to do now is we are going to break down each of these topics. These are big topics, we said, like broadly classified into. Now we are going to subdivide them into small topics, and each of those topics we are going to examine in turn. So part 1, Indian economy, we said is the first part. Now inside that, these are the subtopics. So here you will find the topic heading. Here you will find the subtopic heading. So now you have to understand, now you have to be very familiar with the topics and the subtopics. So first subtopic is economic growth and how to plan for that. So this is what UPSC says: Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. The first segment. So here it's very clearly about making sure we utilize the resources we have so that we can have development and employment growth, etc. So focus areas in this part of the syllabus would be, we have to look at the 12th 5-year plan, because planning. What is the government currently planning, which is the 5-year plan? And is there a need for planning becomes another important issue because of the Niti Aayog. So planning commission has been replaced by Niti Aayog. So is there a need for planning? What kind of planning is required? Those discussions become important, and that becomes a focus area for your current mains preparation. Another important part here to understand is taxation policies, which is linked to mobilization of resources, because mobilizing the resources of the nation. Growth versus development becomes an important issue. What is growth and what is development? Are they both the same? Explored in great detail in our economy lectures. So different measures of growth, GDP versus Human Development Index, growth engine, what causes growth in the economy, such as service. Is it service? Is it industry? It is because of the Make in India discussion. The current economic survey discusses what should we make in India. It should be services or should it be industry? So what is the growth engine of the economy? What can cause good growth and what can cause inclusive growth or development? Those kind of issues become important and focus areas. And in case our growth is not properly focused, then it can lead to jobless growth. Suppose services is the growth engine. Services does not employ too many people, so it can lead to jobless growth. Job is not being created. So employment also comes into the picture. So how to address the issue? So the new initiatives such as Skill India, etc. becomes important focus areas for this year's main. So make sure that anything you read in those aspects, you're making copious notes on those. Various government programs linked to these aspects also becomes very important. So make sure you make good notes from Yojana, newspapers, etc. Anything related to on these things. Now, where can you study these things? Let's look at the sources. Standard economics books will cover most of the important things, even though the current affairs topics will not be there. The BYJU'S videos which are being released regularly as well as in the tablet will be covering these as well as the current affairs. So that becomes an important advantage. Economic survey, entire discussion is very, very important. Economic survey is not easy to follow directly because of dense language, etc. Which is why we have done a specific video on the economic survey, which makes it very easy to understand and also tells you exactly which areas of the economic survey to focus. So make sure you use that wonderful video in your preparation. Now the 12th 5-year plan document itself becomes very important, available in the website. The budget documents are also available in the website, and Niti Aayog, the new modified version of planning commission, these are all important sources. And website of Niti Aayog also becomes a very important source. In addition, there are very good magazines and newspapers available, EPW, which is Economic and Political Weekly, and editorials of Economic Times, Financial Times, etc. Such newspapers also can be used to get a thorough understanding of the focus areas. Now these will focus on the focus areas. So because of that, we'll be able to directly get analysis on the focus areas from these sources. And On HDI and development, we can look at UNDP HDI Human Development Index reports, and they will be giving an analysis on growth versus development. That also becomes an important source. And as we discussed, for government programs, we have India Yearbook, which is an important source. As we go through the rest of our discussion, we'll see how important India Yearbook is. And specifically, there are BYJU'S videos available for all the important government programs, so you can utilize that to the full extent. Now, as we can see, this is a very broad area. The sources are also very disparate. But remember, we had discussed we have to start with the concepts. And to start with concepts, the easiest way to do it is NCERTs. So just a quick list of the NCERTs that will be useful for the whole of this paper. NCERT class 10, the name of the book is Understanding Economic Development. Very useful book to have. So if possible, you can go through this very easy 10th level book and get a good conceptual understanding. The second one required is class 11th Indian Economic Development, second book that is required. Again, something that you can quickly go through. And class 12, there's a textbook on macroeconomics, which will give you very good concepts and very good fundamentals. Now, in this class 12 books, every chapter might not be required. It is advisable to at least read chapter 2, chapter 5 and chapter 6, which are fundamental chapters. The other chapters, if you have time, you can read. So once you finish these 3 NCERT books, you will have the concepts required and you can start moving towards the other sources that we recommended, such as India Yearbook, the 5-year plan document, the websites, etc. You can start looking at those. And also you can start applying the things that you're learning to current affairs, because every day you have to be reading newspaper. So make sure you also look at some of the editorials from Business Standard, Economic Times, etc. and start applying the things that you're learning there. So now we'll quickly look at the previous questions that have come so that you get an understanding of what kind of questions can be expected. Why did Indian economy directly shift from agriculture to services and skip the industrial part? That is one question that had come before. So this is related to planning. So if you understand planning aspect well, this question would have been very easy. We cannot discuss all the questions here, but we are just going to indicate which part it comes from. This is coming from planning aspect of it. Demographic dividend of India and what needs to be done to utilize it. Demographic dividend means a lot of working age population is there. So this is primarily related to employment. This question is about employment and growth. Challenges and constraints of agriculture finance in India. Use of technology in the same. So this is about development and mobilization of resources. We have good resources available, but we are not utilizing the resources well. Here also there's an indication of linking to technology, which is linked to science technology part. So this is how questions are constructed from this part of the syllabus. Companies owned by Indians versus the multinational companies. How is the competition going on? So it's again linked to mobilization of resources and about planning and growth. So because liberalization is linked to planning, so again the question is coming from this part of the syllabus. So this is how questions can come. It's usually based on focused areas and it will be linking to the core ideas. So in each of these questions you can see the core concepts of planning, employment generation, resource mobilization and again planning will help us answer the question in a very conceptually strong fashion. Now the second subtopic under the Indian economic topic, which is inclusive growth. So focus areas inside this is first understanding what is inclusive growth. Inclusive growth means not leaving anybody behind. Suppose India is growing, the poorer part of India also has to be growing. So we have to have inclusive growth, not only some parts of the country growing. What is the need for it? Because otherwise we'll end up with social security issues. Otherwise we'll end up with social order breaking down, internal security issues, etc. So that's why there's a need for it. So what are the strategies for inclusive growth? What are the different models for achieving inclusive growth? These are things we should be focusing on. What are the government's initiatives for inclusive growth? What is the policy framework for it? What are the government programs for it? Again, discussed in the government programs videos. Economic survey, which shows what government's ideas are. Budget, which shows what action government is taking. And 5-year plan strategies, which again shows what planning is being done to tackle inclusive growth. All these areas become important for us. All these strategies, understanding the strategy behind it becomes important. Now let's look at some previous year questions from this topic. Capitalism as a tool for inclusive growth. Can we use capitalism for inclusive growth? By understanding inclusive growth, we can answer this question well. And what it means, we can answer this question well. And we can also look at what are the limitations of capitalism, what are the advantages of capitalism, and construct a very beautiful answer for this. Again, linked to companies. How regulating the companies can help us implement CSR, can help us achieve inclusive growth. So clearly this question is actually another version of this question. capitalism is not enough, sometimes we need regulation as well. That is what these questions together are showing us. So the focus seems to be how to achieve inclusive growth by good regulation. So that kind of questions are what is coming from this area. So what are the sources and the way forward from this topic? Economic survey, very vital. Various government programs, read the original documents as well as look at the videos. The why and the how is important. How is the government program going to be done and why is that program required? Those are the areas we should focus on. Current affairs related to inclusive growth. Be always aware of anything that is related to poverty, anything that's related to some segments being left behind, displacement, dam being built and people being displaced, those kind of issues. And India yearbook again becomes a very important source. So even an essay on this is a potential question because it links together so many important issues. So we can have a holistic essay coming from this. Now the third subtopic under this becomes budgeting, which is a very conceptual part of the syllabus. So different budgetary concepts, process of government budgeting. This part we can even link to the politic concepts of how the parliament works, etc. So highly conceptual part, directly looking at the videos will be more than enough for this part. Challenges and salient features of the latest budget. So that there we have to look at a bit of current affairs focus comes in. Now let's look at the previous year questions to understand how this works. What is the reason for the FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act? What are its salient features, effectiveness? So it is very much linked to the concept of budget and the latest development in budget making. Tax expenditure, which was another question asked. A very simple question, but a very conceptual question. So that is the kind of questions that we can expect from this part of the syllabus. Some of the sources, any standard economics book would actually do for this part because this will always be covered well. The BYJU'S economic lectures covers this in good detail and that is more than enough. Budget documents for the latest developments and economic survey for the latest developments. Strong conceptual understanding is required. That is the most important part. Once you have the concepts clear, you can easily understand the latest budget. Once the concepts are clear, understanding the budget is a cakewalk. So understand the concepts well and then just look at the current affairs, understand, just have a good quick understanding of what the government is doing right now. The fourth segment becomes agriculture. There we are focusing on crops and on farming. So major crops, cropping patterns, different types of irrigation systems, transport, marketing, and some of the constraints limiting agriculture. How can we use technology to overcome those constraints? The same logic is playing out if you can see. So focus areas are cropping patterns. Now, how is minimum support price distorting cropping patterns? Are people cultivating more of one crop than the other because government is promising to buy it? Reasons behind the different cropping patterns. Here, this is linked to geography, history also. Map-based knowledge becomes very important here. So make sure you look at geography lectures to understand this part. Effect of irrigation on cropping patterns. How the irrigation comes about. What are the controversies related to irrigation? Those becomes very big important focus areas. And about irrigation itself, canal, well, tank, the different types of irrigations, the pros and cons of the different types of irrigation, especially of tube well and drip irrigation, another important technology. What are the new technologies that can help us tackle some issues? Those becomes important focus areas. Then we have to look at the policy areas, the APMC, the Model APMC Act, the controversies relating to the APMC Act. What are the constraints due to the existing policy framework? What solutions can we come up with? What recent changes are happening about the policy framework? This is primarily about how the farmers' products are brought to the market, the marketing aspect of it. So this area becomes about how to sell the agriculture produce. This is primarily about the production part. This is primarily about the distribution part. So both of them are focus areas. Then finally, technological solutions. How can we bring in technology to solve some of the problems? Soil health card scheme. People are overusing fertilizers, but what is required for soil only we should give. So soil health card, weather forecasting, how can we improve weather forecasting and give insurance, help the farmers plan ahead, etc. Different types of seeds, the high yielding varieties, the GM crops controversy, price discovery mechanisms such as futures markets and forwards markets, having a commodity market scheme in India and how that helps. This all becomes important focus areas from which we can expect questions. So let's look at previous year's questions and the way forward. APMC as a cause of food inflation was a question that came. This is because the distribution is being distorted by APMC. So it might cause not enough food material to reach the market, the farmers getting discouraged, etc. because of the whole mandi system not being efficient. So that kind of an answer can be constructed here. You have to understand the concept of inflation and the concept of APMC and the problems and solutions with it, and a very easy question to answer. Very high scoring question if you had understood the concepts beforehand. So what are the sources? NCERT class 10, an extra NCRT being discussed here, geographic resource and development, because this will give you a good map based knowledge about irrigation, about the different cropping patterns, etc. An important source. Model APMC Act. Economic Survey has a chapter on APMC which is again discussed in a video. Please have a look at that. Recent changes about this newspaper will give you those in understanding. About cropping pattern and irrigation, very standard, very basic concepts. So any of the standard books such as Majid Hussain, Kullar, or any standard Indian geography book will help you with that. Notes on these topics are important because these are factual stuff, so it's hard to keep in your mind. So make sure you make good notes and revise them well. These are good scoring areas again because direct conceptual questions are what can be expected here. See, very direct conceptual question that came. So now let's look at some of the policy measures in agriculture. What policy measures government can take? Direct and indirect farm subsidies, minimum support prices, PDS, ration card system, what are the objectives, how it functions, what are the limitations, and how buffer stock, food security problems, and technology. How can we use technology to solve some of those problems? And animal rearing, some of the related areas of agriculture. So focus areas are subsidy, very big important focus area because we're trying to reduce subsidy in a lot of things such as LPG, fertilizers, etc. Minimum support price and direct benefit transfer. So these are hot topics right now. Very hot topics right now. Public distribution system, how it has been reformed, how the Food Corporation of India has been reformed, what kind of food security issues is related to this, such as food wastage, food shortage, etc. Shanda Kumar committee report becomes an important source here. You can also look at some of the success stories of how things have been implemented and people have benefited from it. All the technology missions related to improving agriculture is vital. So India Yearbook has a comprehensive section on this. You can go through that particular section. And economics of animal rearing, which is the associated area to agriculture. So any government intervention, any scheme, should we export versus create our own markets? Now some of these things become focus areas. So previous year's questions from this area. The food security bill has generated one question. So what was the WTO concerns related to it? So primarily this is about subsidy. This WTO does not allow countries to give certain kinds of subsidy. So understanding subsidy, we would have easily been able to tackle this question. Here it's a direct question of what kind of subsidy is being given and what are the effects of those subsidies. So just by understanding the concept of subsidy well, easy question to answer. A question on pink revolution has been asked, which is part of the government program to improve production in different variety of things. So we have different revolutions. So make sure you use India Yearbook and government websites to keep a track of what areas government is focusing on, which products government wants to improve. So what are the sources for this? Economic Survey has a good discussion on subsidies, so becomes very important. It also discusses PDS, another important place. Chanda Kumar committee report becomes important. Any current happening newspapers and all the technology missions using India Yearbook, and make sure you also use the internal well here. Make sure you revise these areas well because different missions and facts, etc. So revision becomes important here. So make sure you're updated on all the issues. Now the next issue is food processing, which is after production, after distribution, the final processing of food, adding value to it. So what are the scope, what are the significance, what are the location, why only in some areas certain kind of processing happens, what are the requirements, how to manage it well, the supply of it, all these things become important. So focus areas, what is food processing, we should understand, why is it important, we should understand, what are the meaning of backward and forward linkages, we should understand, which means food processing here, what are the forward linkages to the further chains and the backward linkages to the production part, the agricultural part, those things become important. Scope and significance, food processing in India is in a nascent stage. So a lot of potential is there to improve and grow fast, and this will lead to a lot of reducing in wastage, etc. So helps our food security, which is why food processing is a vital area. What are the success factors? Are there any success stories? What are the things we can do? Those also becomes good focus areas. Domestic versus export markets become very important discussion here. This can also be tied in with the Make in India discussion. So that also becomes another focus area. Should most of food processing be domestic, or should be for domestic consumption, or should we be also doing more for export markets? Can we do a lot of export-led growth in food processing? Those are some of the issues that can be discussed. Different government schemes again becomes very important. So sources, strategic plan by the Ministry of Food, or the strategic plans by the Food Processing Ministry, their website, their different reports becomes useful sources. And all the different organizations such as CCI, CCI, IBF, ASOCHAM, etc. will have their own reports being put out. So Google them. In this area, internet is your best friend. So in general in the syllabus as well, because current affairs focused, leverage internet. If you have access to it, make sure you utilize it well. The seventh is land reforms. The seventh subtopic is land reforms. Focus areas, historical perspective becomes very important here. A lot of linkage right back to independence of India. From permanent settlement of Bengal in the beginning of the 20th century till the recent LARR Act in 21st century. The entire perspective becomes important. And why are there controversies about recent changes for ordinance that came and lapsed, etc. So those also becomes important focus areas. The Bhutan movement, again linked to the independence discussion. Questions have come on this, another focus area. So previous year questions, the latest act, the different issues, will it address or not? So we have to basically analyze the act. So if you have understood the LARR Act well, very simple question to answer. So this is a very comprehensive question which discusses land reforms, importance of that, and why it has not worked as well and what can be done. So just by understanding the concept and the history of it, this again becomes a potentially high scoring question. So sources, any standard history book will give you a full perspective. So you can look at India Since Independence by Bipin Chandra, NCRT books, etc. are good sources for this. And also the BYJU'S videos have covered this comprehensively. For LARR Act itself, we have to read the act itself and make good notes. The PIB website is good for all act related topics. So any act you don't understand, PIB will give you a simple one-page summary, so you can use that. So you have to establish linkages between the whatever land reform is happening and to growth, because it's part of Indian economic syllabus. So the focus is all about growth, inclusive growth and sustainable growth. So how can land reforms make sure those things happen? So that linkage has to be maintained in your thought process when you study. So it's again high scoring potential. So eighth subtopic is LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, globalization. So what are the effects? How those policy changes affected in economic growth. So here we are effectively looking at how economic growth can react drastically to policy changes. So this segment shows policy is important. So previous year's questions. The FDI, LPG is about liberalization. So new FDI coming in, etc. becomes an important focus area here. So FDI entry, what is the impact of that? A simple question has been asked. So by understanding what meaning of LPG and the history and the overall progress of these things, we'll be able to answer this question well. This is a question that asks, even though we allowed FDI, why is FDI not picking up? So there we have to discuss what extra reforms are required. So that kind of a question can also come, which is a future-oriented question. Rationale behind GST and delay in its rollout. Another important question related to reform, because we are rationalizing our tax structure. We're making it more liberal. So that, why do we want to do it? And how will it make our reforms even better? That kind of question can come. So what are the sources? Economic survey becomes one of the most important sources for this part, because it's primarily about reforms, and any standard book for LPG and BYJU'S videos and economics are also a good source for this, because it's comprehensively covered there. The ninth subtopic is infrastructure. Here we'll look at energy, the ports, roads, airports, railways, etc. How to improve the infrastructure of the country. The focus areas, again, economic survey analyzes all these. India yearbook will give you good data and all the schemes will be there. The current happenings you'll get from newspaper, any current controversies, any extra work on railways such as high-speed railways, etc. that you'll get from newspapers. And railways, you can also have a look at Bibek Debroy report, which is a very useful report on analyzing where it should be heading. Different ministry website, each of them have their own ministries. So the ministry websites we can have a look at. One example of previous year question about urban transport policy and how government strategy is helping. So very simple question. If you understand these things, we can directly apply them here and answer them. Investment models is about how to invest. We want to do all these things, but everything requires money to go in. How to put that money in, that is this part of the syllabus. How should money go? Should only government put? Should only private sector put? Should government and private sector put? What are the different investment models possible? So focus areas are different strategies, public-private partnership, build, operate, transfer. All these becomes important different models we can try out to invest well. Invest in what? Invest in growth, infrastructure, etc. What is the need for public-private partnership in India? The public sector will be giving a focus, private sector will be giving the investment and management capacity. So what are the advantages, the disadvantages? Those things become important. The economic survey has done great analysis on this. So an important question that came was how PPP sometimes keeps on dragging too much. So how can we improve PPP? That is a simple question. So economic surveys analysis is linked very much to this. If you have read that well, this becomes an easy question to answer. Pros and cons of PPP models. Just by understanding PPP itself, this becomes a very simple question to answer. So there are guidebooks put out by government which we can read. Economic survey has done wonderful analysis as discussed. So this would be a good source. And this toolkit, there's a website here And you can use the website and have a look at toolkit. This gives an understanding of how to create a PPP toolkit, how the private sector can be brought in and made to understand exactly what is required. So in effect, our sources can be summarized to a very simple extent. NCERTs, very important for basic concepts, plus BYJU'S videos for slightly higher level concepts also, or standard books will cover the concepts. So concepts aspects can be completely covered by NCERTs, the videos and the standard textbooks. And current affairs, we have India Yearbook, Economic Survey and the ministry websites. Along with that, the BYJU'S classes current affairs video releases will help you keep up to date. So this will cover the entire economy section. Now let's look at the environment part, which is part 2. Subtopic under 1, the first subtopic is pollution and conservation. Conservation, environmental pollution, degradation, impact. How do we assess how much impact is happening? So growth causes environmental impact. So can we assess that impact? How should we assess it? And once we assess it, how can we control some of the unnecessary things being done as part of growth so that we can have sustainable growth? That is the logic behind this part of the syllabus. So focus areas become environmental impact assessment. What is the process behind it? How is it done? What is the need behind it? This is a very basic part. It's completely comprehensively covered in a video. So you can quickly take a look at that videos and understand what economic impact assessment means and how is it done. Basics of environment ecology. This you must have already done for prelims and it's already there in good detail in the videos. You can easily use them and also available in standard textbooks. So nothing to worry about in this part. We have to have a special focus on the different pollutants. Pollutants mean things that cause pollution and different acts to contain pollution. Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act. We have to have a focus on that. Special rulings. Whatever NGT is doing and Supreme Court is doing, these are the two organizations that is really stopping environment being degraded in India. The Green Tribunal and Supreme Court. So their activities, the current affairs focus has to be there. Climate change, the different organizations, the different treaties, India's stand on climate change, what is our contribution, what are we saying about climate change, those things become important. About carbon emissions, the Kyoto Protocol, all those issues. Now, one important consequence of industrial growth is usually that rivers get polluted. So, Namami Gange program and other programs which helps to conserve the rivers also become an important focus area. Also a hot topic because of controversy around it. So sources can be all the current happenings. Current events are very important in this part. Newspaper, Yojana, Kurukshetra will give you good understanding. And some of the standard material would be NIO, IGNOU material on environment and biodiversity, India Yearbook, another good source. Official site of Ministry of Environment and Forest for their guidelines, etc. Any standard book on environment for basics or the BYJU'S videos would suffice for this. So concept wise, it's very easy. Current affairs, you just have to keep up to date. So check video on air pollution, which is the hot topic in pollution for this year. So previous year's questions on this topic. This is about the climate change and how we have tried to stop it. The carbon credits discussion discussed in our videos. You can have a look at that. How it works and why it did not work and what can be done to improve it. Typical structure of a question. How does it work? What are the problems and how can we improve it? That's also how we should structure any answer. Impact of coal. We have to use coal for development, but what are the impacts? What kind of hydroelectricity project can make the impacts less? Another kind of question related to impacts. Consequences, again impact. Go or no-go zones. How can we solve some of those impacts by putting good policy frameworks in place? As you can see, the questions are usually coming based on some activities happening. What are the impacts and how can we reduce the impact a little bit? So again, national water policy. How can we combat river pollution? How are we trying to manage hazardous waste, which is a consequence of development, etc. So the entire structure seems to be how to stop things. So you have to think on those lines to answer these kind of questions. Now we come to part 3, which is science and technology. So first subtopic is awareness of developments, the current affairs, whatever new things are happening, you should be up to date on that. In the different fields such as IT, space, computers, nanotechnology, different fields, you should be up to date. Because without being up to date, how can you apply them? So previous year's questions, distinguish between copyright, patent, etc. because this helps people invest. People don't invest unless patent measures, etc. are there. So that becomes one potential question. India's patent law, the Novartis case which related to patent case, so intellectual property right becomes important. So these are some of the questions that have come from this field. So current happenings, newspapers such as Science Reporter in good source. Hindu has a science and technology section which usually comes on Thursdays, another good source. We have YouTube videos called Science Monitor, another good source. Any standard science and technology book on computers, robotics, etc. should be enough for the basics, for the concepts, but you have to keep up to date on the current events as well. Now, applications. How can we use the latest technology and apply them in real life? So, application-based things. So, a quick look at the previous year's questions will show how it's all application-based. Antibiotics, What are the problems that can be caused by it? How can we stop those problems? What are the mechanisms available for controlling and monitoring them? Applying the technology of medicine. Again, another question linked to the same question, similar kind of question. Umpire decision review system. It is high technology, camera, infrared technology, etc. being used, applied in sports. So a question based on that. Digital signature, another important IT technology which is being used, which has a daily application. So what is it and what are the features of it? 3D printing, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Another new technology which is coming into real life. So question came on that. A material called FRP, what is the manufacturing process? Another applied question. So most of this is technology based question, science based question, more related to intellectual property. So what we have seen is that most of the technology questions are applied application based, whereas science questions seems to be process based, legal framework, patent law, etc. So both aspects make sure concepts are clear and you're up to date on the latest controversies such as Novartis case. In addition to this, so as far as sources are concerned, for you, the starting point should be India Yearbook. India Yearbook lists out all the things that is happening in science and technology to a great extent. In addition to that, the Hindu Science and Technology section would be sufficient. And a bit of net digging will help out a lot. Just keep an alert for science and technology, follow some of the important science and technology newspaper, magazines, etc. Now, before we move on to the next subtopic, we can classify the questions that come in application in science and technology. Only two types can come. First type is applied for helping the poor and downtrodden. So helping the poorer segments, how can we use technology there? So here examples would be public health. Any technology related to public health becomes important. Multi-drug resistance, the patent laws, the drug combinations, etc. are coming from that. So anything related to health becomes very important. Anything that can impact health. Second is anything related to agriculture. Any technology that can improve agriculture becomes an important question because it can help inclusive growth. Next is any technology linked to education. So EdTech, etc. is becoming very important right now. So education related technology and ideas also become important. The second category is mass application. Technology which has a mass application becomes important. So examples would be IT, 3D printers, etc. So primarily the applied can be either helping health, education and agriculture or mass application which is directly impacting your daily life. So technology has to either have an impact on some of these important areas or it should have impact on our daily life. Then the question can come. So keep that formula in mind when you study this part. Now the last subtopic under science and technology, Indian achievements. What are our contributions? So previous year's questions has been, how has liberalization of FDI in defense helped? So here we can talk about ISRO and DRDO, etc. and how some of our advances have been linked to policy changes. What is causing scientific research to have problems? How can we solve those? So again, related to Indian contribution, how to improve the contribution. So IDSA website has good analysis on this. India Yearbook has good analysis on this, and current happenings and current discussions, you should follow those. Defense procurement policy linked to this, so we can have a look at that as well as a source in this segment. Now we come to part 4 or disaster management. So focus areas are understanding the different hazards, natural hazards, what is a crisis, how to have a crisis management strategy, what is the current strategy of Government of India, what are the different types of hazards, earthquakes, tsunami, flood, drought, what are the different methods for managing each of them. All this covered in great detail in the videos. You can quickly go through them. Within a few hours, you would have covered the entire syllabus of disaster management. It's very easy, highly scoring topic. What is the Disaster Management Act of 2005? What does it say? What is the approach under it? What's the arrangement under it? What are the different aspects of disaster management? What do each of these words mean? What do they entail? And how can we do those things? Very basic syllabus, very basic concepts. Previous year's questions, what are the guidelines of National Disaster Management Authority and how was India preparing to deal with El Nino? We are trying to have growth, but if El Nino comes, our whole growth might get compromised. So how can we prepare for it? How can we reduce the impact? Simple kind of question, exactly according to the logic of the paper. What is the importance of risk assessment? How do we do disaster management? If you understand this part, this becomes a direct high scoring question for us. So what are the sources? Disaster Management Act. Second ARC Administrative Reforms Commission has put out a report on disaster management. Wonderful source. You can use that, and you can also use the BYJU'S videos for it. So you can also have a look at recent disasters. What are the causes? Nepal earthquake, we have done a video. Please have a look at that. So these kind of things you have to keep updated on, but make sure you're looking at what are the causes and what could have been done and what should we do next time it happens. That should be the focus. That should be the way in which you think. Now make sure you do not only restrict yourself to natural disasters, Man-made disasters are also possible, so have a look out for those as well. So things like Bhopal gas tragedy becomes important because an anniversary is coming up, and whenever an anniversary comes up, questions potential is there to come. Man-made and natural disasters. So now we come to the fifth part, which is security issues. High scoring potential because very concrete answers can be given, and the syllabus conceals more than it reveals. If you look at the syllabus, it will seem very easy, but it has so many linkages. You have to be able to process those things. That's what you have to focus on. So first you should get to know the syllabus, then you will make sure current focus, you understand that questions are all common sense questions, very much based on the current focus. High scoring is possible. Only thing is you should cover all the facets and give focused answers. It's very easy to give a very global answer to these questions, but you should understand exactly how the problem is coming and how we can solve it. What are the linkages to growth and planning, to environment, to science and technology, and to disaster management. So what of these problems, where is the cause of the problem, and then how can we attack the root of the problem? That kind of answer will make it high scoring. Only that kind of answer. That is what you have to cultivate as you practice. So quick look at the syllabus. So this is the entire syllabus. The linkages between development, the link to economy, linkage between state and non-state actors, how technology can sometimes create problems. Technology might not only solve problems, but it can also have side effects. So science and technology segment also becomes important here because side effects of science and technology, and linkages to terrorism, border, international conflicts, etc. Some of these issues can have spillover effects, and the different agencies and their mandates. This is the entire syllabus. The good sources are BYJU'S videos. We have a comprehensive video on security issues. Normally, this is one ignored part of the syllabus, but it's a high scoring potential. So we have done a complete video section. So make sure you utilize that well. In addition to that, ARC reports are there, Wikipedia is a useful source, IDSA is a useful source, and there are some books also available in the market, but this is a neglected section. So make sure you use the videos well. So first segment, development and extremism. Now if we don't do development and only growth, it can lead to problems, that interlinkage. So focus areas, we have to start from Naxal movement from the beginning till today. Economic and social conditions of the region, how cause and effect analysis has to be done, what is causing the issues, what kind of development did not happen there, did growth neglect some areas, was inclusive growth not done, all those aspects you should bring in. What are the government's response, security, management? So how did government respond to extremism? Was it a good response? Was it a humane response? And will that response actually solve the fundamental issues of the region? Those things we have to analyze. What are the kind of solutions possible? Can we solve it through just social and economic development? Can we solve it through brute force? Just putting a lot of army and police there, can we solve it? Can we do it through dialogue? Can we do it through good governance? What are the pros and cons of different measures? Some things might be short-term versus long-term, different aspects. Role of panchayats and grassroots democracy, can that have an impact? All these things we have to focus on. And currently extremism in Northeast and Nepal is in focus area. So what are the linkages and the Myanmar, Manipur, Naga area there, and what are the problems being happening there? Those are things you should be focusing on as you read newspaper, etc. So here you can look at things like PISA, the Panchayat extension to scheduled areas, problems in tribal areas, and why do problems come in tribal areas? Because we are neglecting development. The Forest Rights Act, how can we make the tribals feel part of the country through democracy and giving them rights? So these issues we have to focus on. So let's look at some of the previous year questions. As we can clearly see, the tribal area has been an important question. Way forward, we have to look at cause effect analysis, how to solve these problems. Always has to start from cause and what are the effects of actions, various solutions, pros and cons, government initiatives. You have to look at these four things. Success stories can also be used. So in their yearbook, some of the magazine articles, etc. will give you good success stories. So here, a human element might bring in good marks. Second is terrorism. So we have to know what is terrorism, what are the different types of terrorism, what causes terrorism. Could be because of nationalist movements, religion could cause, ideology could cause, state might sponsor it, could be because of narcotics, because of market. It could also be because of development. So different things can lead to terrorism. What is causing it? Again, the cause effect analysis. What are the different features of terrorism? What are the Indian laws with link to terrorism? Are they inadequate? What can be done to improve them? And what are the solutions we can look at? What is the link to black money, Prevention of Money Laundering Act? So what is the link to terrorism and black money, which is again linked to growth and development, which is again linked to economy and policy making, etc. So this interlinkages become very, very important in this part of the syllabus. What are the international actions being taken? How are countries cooperating? The current examples such as ISIS, Pak-sponsored terrorism, etc. you should be keeping a focus on. Previous year's questions, no direct questions have come yet, but we have to focus on things like why a particular type of terrorism happening and how to solve it. International terrorism, what are the causes, solutions, etc. ISIS becomes an important focus area this year. Current affairs, ARC report, IDSA briefs, etc. becomes good sources for you to tackle this part of the syllabus. So role of state and non-state actors, there are different things that are linked together: narcotics, terrorism, Naxalism, insurgency, all these things are linked to each other. So understand the interlinkages between all these. Now we come to the technology aspect. Media and technology can also have some bad consequences. So what are the challenges posed by communication network? Challenges because of technology. The communication network being used, instead of being used well, they're being used for bad purposes such as propaganda, for financing, generating money, for training people, putting out training videos, for planning through communication network, execution of, etc. How is technology being misused? Keep an eye out for that. And what is the role of media in all this? The media should do unbiased reporting, not cause problems. It should have self-regulation. It should be accountable to people. And also it should not have strategic problems, such as suppose the army is doing an important operation and media goes and covers it. That's a strategic problem there. Now the terrorist organizations know exactly what is going on there. So media has to be more self-regulated when it comes to this kind of issues. Social networks, what are their features and threats? How can they be used and misused? And can they be used well also? These things also we have to focus on. So previous year's questions, as you can see, has come on social networking sites and their security implications. Cyber warfare, one question has come. Impact of radicalization of India and how is it connected to communication network? So how ISIS is using Twitter, Facebook, online recruitment, etc. can be discussed as part of this question. So what are the way forward? Just keep updated on the current affairs. And you should have a balanced view. Technology is important, but it has side effects. So we should have freedom of press. At the same time, it should be self-regulated. Make sure that things don't go overboard. How to achieve that fine balance should be the focus of your answers. So there is no particular book that focuses on this. We have videos coming out on these issues as and when they come forward. So good common sense, understanding of the concepts and current affairs knowledge should be enough for this part of it. Cyber security is a linked area, linked to technology again. So computer can be a useful thing. At the same time, it can be a bad thing also. Target, weapon, accessory, etc. Cyber crime can include hacking, child porn, malware, all these different issues are there. How to tackle these issues? So keep an eye on those. Cyber attacks, what does that mean? China, it has been on the focus of China causing cyber attacks, etc. So those issues you should have a clear focus on. Cyber warfare, what does it mean? How can we tackle it? Cyber terrorism, etc. So what are international methods being done to counter these things? How can we have confidentiality, integrity and availability at the same time? Because data collection will lead to big brother is watching us kind of scenario. How to provide people privacy at the same time, give them security. That becomes another important nexus area. Specifically India's policy, you should have a clear understanding of those. And some of the international regulations and bodies. So previous year's question, cyber warfare, larger threat than terrorism, question came in 2013. So direct application of what we've just been discussing. Way forward, know the basics. India yearbook becomes a good source because they put out all the discussions on cyber warfare, what India is doing, schemes, etc. Then current affairs focus. Special focus on cyber warfare by state actors. State-sponsored cyber warfare, please keep a special focus on that. Black money, another very important issue linked to all this because everything requires money. Where is the money coming from? How is that leakage happening? What kind of policy measures can be done? Definition, process of black money. Why is India so vulnerable to it? What kind of prevention can be done? What laws are there? What are the international efforts? Financial Action Task Force, what are they doing? Is India a signatory? What is India's role? What are the different ways of tax money laundering happening? What is black money? How is it generated? Previous year's question. Let's have a look at previous year's questions based on this. How is money laundering a threat to the economic sovereignty? India will lose control over our own monetary policy if we allow this to happen. What are the consequences of it? How can we stop it? That kind of questions. Way forward, focus on the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and the different solutions we are trying out. And also have a lookout for the current black money discussions going on with the Switzerland, with the Swiss banks, etc. The actions by Indian government to make sure the money laundering is reduced. All those things are important focus areas as of this year. Now, border areas and security challenges there. So different border skirmishes, different drug trade, arms trade, how to put in military, how to take them out, exfiltration and infiltration, narco-terrorism, which is linked to drugs again, left-wing terrorism, which is linked to ideological terrorism. What are the issues happening there? What are the issues in the Bangladesh border, illegal migration issues happening on that front? These are important specific issues to focus on. So border area development program is a program by Indian government. How is that functioning? What is the meaning of that? Along with that, not just land borders. We should also focus on coastal security, maritime and airspace. We have to also protect our coastal and air boundaries as well. So make sure you focus on that as well when preparing from current affairs, etc., and while making your notes. Previous year's questions: porous borders and what is the internal security challenge arising from that? Illegal trans-border migration, how can we stop that? Important question this year because of Syrian refugee crisis. Migration is a very important hot topic this year. Read up on all the focus areas. Current issues are important because of Syrian refugee crisis. Very, very important area this year. Potential questions can come. Western border of India and migration issues happening there. Golden Triangle and Crescent, two geographic areas in between which India is there. Middle East and South Asia, both of them are having a lot of terrorist activities and unstable political environment, and India is in the middle. If a refugee crisis happens, it will all come to India. So India has to be prepared for it. So our porous borders has to be better monitored. So those kind of issues become important. So what is the link between organized crime and terrorism? Again, drug trade, trafficking, fake currency, corruption, interlinkages. What characterizes organized crime which has linked to terrorism? When does organized crime and terrorism go hand in hand? Usually because the state-sponsored terrorism. A failed state can lead to something called black hole syndrome, where all law and order breaks down. Then crime and terrorism will have coexistence, cooperation and confluence, which means effectively the people who are doing the crime and the people who are doing terrorism and the people who are doing governance are all the same. So that kind of issues, where are they happening? Countries like Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, etc. are examples of this. So we should have a focus on this as well. So overall, we can say, make sure you don't go all over the place. Don't try to read too many books, etc. at this time. So limited sources. Make sure you use the comprehensive focus videos. Make sure you use standard textbooks, and make sure you use sources like India Yearbook, Economic Survey, etc. so that you can have a focused approach. You should create nice, good notes so that you can revise well. Make sure you subscribe to All India Test Paper series to practice answer writing and get really good feedback, and also where you stand with respect to the rest of the country. Revise again and make sure everything is syllabus focused. Keep the syllabus in front of you always. Make sure everything is linked to that. And if you do all that well, we can be sure that we can sprint well and reach the finish line. All the best. Thank you for watching.